The ballroom of the Blackthorn Pack Lodge was full of light and music. Wolves from every corner of the territory stood shoulder to shoulder, dressed in silk and pressed suits, waiting for their alpha to speak. Tonight, Alpha Ronan Blackthorn would name his Luna, and everyone believed they already knew who it would be. Sarah Ashworth stood near the front of the crowd. She wore a plain gray dress, simple and modest, because she had been told many times that this was what suited her best. Her hands were folded together, and her heart was beating fast. For 6 years, she had been raised inside this pack for one single purpose. She was the girl everyone whispered about, the orphan taken in as a child, quietly shaped and trained to one day stand beside the throne. She had spent those years trying to be small. She smiled when she was told to smile. She stayed quiet when she was told to stay quiet. She worked harder than anyone else in the pack house, hoping that one day her effort would be seen and rewarded. She let herself believe, in secret, that tonight would be the night all of that finally meant something. Ronan climbed onto the wooden dais. His golden eyes moved slowly across the crowd until they landed on her. He smiled at her, the same warm smile he had given her many times before, in quiet hallways and empty gardens, a smile that had once made her believe in a future with him. "Tonight," he said, his voice carrying easily across the silent room, "I name my Luna." Sarah took a small step forward before she could stop herself. "Camille Voss," Ronan announced. The room burst into applause. Camille, the daughter of the pack's richest family, walked gracefully up the dais steps in a flowing ivory gown. She looked triumphant, as if she had always known this moment would belong to her. She slipped her hand into Ronan's, and the crowd cheered louder. Sarah could not move. She stood frozen in the middle of the crowd, as hundreds of eyes slowly turned toward her. It was not an accident that everyone was looking. It was not an accident that Ronan had waited until this exact moment, in front of the entire pack, to reveal what he had chosen. She saw something flicker across his face when their eyes met again, something close to satisfaction. He had wanted her to hope. He had wanted the whole pack watching when that hope was destroyed. "She has no wolf," Ronan said, gesturing toward her as if explaining something simple to a room full of children. "She was never fit to lead this pack. I allowed this to continue out of pity, nothing more. Camille is the Luna this pack deserves." Soft laughter moved through the crowd. Camille's smile grew sharper, more pleased with every passing second. Something deep inside Sarah's chest, something that had been silent since the day she was born, slowly opened one eye. She had grown up believing she was different from every other wolf in the territory. She was the one child born into a shifter bloodline who had never once felt the change stir inside her. The pack called her wolfless. They said it was a flaw, a strange defect they had chosen to overlook out of kindness. She had believed this her entire life, because everyone around her repeated it so often that she never thought to question it. But standing there, in front of the whole pack, feeling every pair of eyes measure her disgrace, something ancient inside her stirred. It was not asleep, as she had always believed. It had simply been waiting. Without saying a single word, Sarah turned and walked out of the lodge. No one stopped her. No one thought a wolfless girl leaving in shame was worth the trouble of chasing after. She walked until the music and laughter faded completely behind her, until the trees swallowed the lights of the lodge, until there was nothing left but the cold night air and the wide, dark sky above her. Only then did she allow herself to feel the full weight of everything Ronan had done, not just tonight, but across many quiet years. Every gentle word had been a leash. Every soft promise had been something he never intended to keep. The pain cracked something open inside her chest. A sudden heat spread down her spine. Her vision sharpened until the world split into brighter shades of gold and silver. Bones she never knew could move began shifting beneath her skin in one long wave of pain and release. When it was finally over, Sarah Ashworth was standing on 4 paws in the middle of a quiet clearing, breathing air that suddenly smelled like 1,000 different living things, each one distinct and clear. She was not wolfless. She had never been wolfless. She was something the old stories only spoke of in careful whispers, a bloodline so rare that most wolves believed it no longer existed. Her kind was said to awaken only once in 100 years, born for the single purpose of removing false leaders from thrones they did not deserve. Her wolf had waited 18 years, silent and patient, for the exact moment its human would finally stop begging for the love of someone who was never worthy of her. That night, Sarah ran through the forest until the first light of dawn touched the tops of the trees. When she finally shifted back into her human form at the edge of the lodge grounds, she no longer felt small. For the first time in her life, she felt whole. The pack gathered again at sunrise for the binding ceremony, the ritual meant to seal Camille as Luna in front of the entire territory. Ronan stood at the old stone altar with Camille's hand resting in his, while the pack elders began speaking the ancient words of the ceremony. Sarah walked through the lodge doors as if she had always belonged there, because in every way that truly mattered, she did. "Stop," she said. Her voice came out layered with something new, something powerful, something that made the elders straighten their spines without meaning to. It was the kind of sound that a wolf's blood remembers, even when the mind has long forgotten its meaning. Ronan turned toward her, his face already twisting with anger, already forming the words he planned to use to shame her once again. He never got the chance. Sarah shifted where she stood, the change happening cleanly and impossibly fast. In her place stood a wolf the size of a horse, her fur shining like moonlight. The pack elders dropped to their knees at once, not out of tradition, but because something ancient inside them recognized her and could not resist. An original stood inside their lodge. In this single moment, she held the power to decide whether their false alpha would keep his throne past noon. Camille stumbled backward, pulling her hand free from Ronan's grip. Ronan himself turned pale in a way Sarah had never once seen during the 6 years she had quietly watched him perform confidence in front of a crowd. Sarah shifted back into her human form, and the room fell into complete silence. "You called me wolfless," she said, her voice steady and clear. "You called me unfit to lead. You stood on that very dais last night and told 300 people that I was nothing more than a charity case you regretted taking in." She let her words settle over the room, allowing them to reach every face present, including his. "You did not throw away nothing last night, Ronan. You threw away the one wolf every ancestor of yours was taught to kneel for, if she ever came." The elders were already on their knees. One by one, the rest of the pack followed, a slow and steady wave of bodies bowing across the lodge floor, until only Ronan and Camille remained standing. A moment later, even they could no longer stay upright. Ronan's position as alpha had never truly been unchallenged. It had simply never been tested by someone the pack's ancient blood recognized as greater than him. Now, it recognized her completely. The old laws required no vote, no long debate. They only needed a true leader to reveal herself, and a false one to be standing in the way when she did. By the time the sun had fully risen above the trees, Sarah Ashworth stood as alpha of the Blackthorn pack, in every sense that the pack's oldest traditions understood the word. Ronan Blackthorn was no longer anyone of importance at all. He had been stripped of his rank and cut off from the pack bond that had fueled his strength his entire life. He stood alone in a lodge that no longer belonged to him, surrounded by people who had once called him leader. Camille did not wait to see how the rest of the morning would unfold. By midday, she was gone from the territory, and no one bothered to ask where she had gone. Sarah stood on the same dais where she had been humiliated, only 12 hours earlier. She looked out over a pack now kneeling before the same girl they had once called nothing. She had never wanted a throne. All she had ever truly wanted was to be chosen honestly, to be loved without conditions, to matter to someone without having to shrink herself first. But her wolf, patient through 18 quiet years, had waited for exactly the right dawn to make certain she would never again have to beg for that kind of respect. In the weeks that followed, the pack slowly began to change. Word spread through the territory about the new alpha, the girl once dismissed as wolfless, who had turned out to carry the rarest bloodline anyone had seen in generations. Wolves from neighboring lands came to see her for themselves, some out of curiosity, some out of respect, and some simply to understand how a story like hers could be true. Sarah did not rule the way Ronan had. She listened more than she spoke. She remembered what it felt like to be overlooked, to be treated as though her voice did not matter, and she made sure that no one in her pack would ever have to feel that way again. She visited the pack house kitchens, where she had once worked quietly as a young girl, and thanked the people there for the years of small kindness they had shown her when no one else had. She walked through the training grounds and spoke with the youngest wolves, the ones who had never felt the change yet, and told them that no one could ever truly know what a person was capable of until the right moment arrived. Some nights, she would walk alone into the forest, where her wolf had first appeared. She would sit quietly beneath the trees and think about the girl she used to be, the one who tried so hard to be small enough not to bother anyone. She did not feel anger toward that girl anymore. She understood her. She had simply been waiting, just like her wolf, for the moment she would finally be allowed to grow into who she truly was. Ronan was never seen in Blackthorn territory again. Some said he wandered from pack to pack, unable to settle anywhere, haunted by the memory of the night he lost everything in a single ceremony. Others said very little about him at all, because there was little left to say. He had built his entire life on the idea that power came from controlling others, from deciding who deserved to be seen and who did not. In the end, that same idea was the reason his throne slipped so easily from his hands. Sarah's story became something the younger wolves in the pack liked to tell each other quietly at night, not as a warning, but as a kind of comfort. It reminded them that being underestimated was not the same as being weak. It reminded them that patience, even painful patience, sometimes carries a purpose no one else can see. As the seasons changed, Blackthorn Pack grew stronger under her leadership, not because she demanded loyalty, but because she had earned it honestly, the same thing she had always wanted for herself. The pack that once watched her walk out of a ballroom in silence now stood behind her without hesitation, ready to follow wherever she chose to lead them. And every morning, when the sun rose over the tree line and touched the lodge windows with soft golden light, Sarah remembered that single dawn when everything had changed. She remembered the fear, the heartbreak, and the quiet strength that had carried her through it. She remembered that sometimes the very thing people use to make you feel small is the exact thing that ends up making you unstoppable. She never again had to wonder if she was worthy of being chosen. She had chosen herself first, and everything else had simply followed.